Hey friends, welcome back. This is Ashley at Uncommon Roots Homestead, and today my sibling Sky is in town and it's time for a garden tour. It is not the best time to do a garden tour. It is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and super sunny, but we're here and there are some exciting things happening in the garden, so I want to do it. As a reminder, we are here in East Tennessee, Zone 7A, and this is our first July garden tour. So it's early July. I think it's July 3rd. It's July 3rd. So let's do it. So we are definitely to that point in the gardening season where it doesn't make sense to ever do a garden tour without a harvest basket. So I've got my basket, I've got my pruners. Hopefully there's not too much going on that needs to be pruned, but there probably is. It's been a couple days since I've been able to be out in the garden. So yeah, let's do it. I'm super excited about some of the things I've seen. It would not be the beginning of any garden tour if I did not show you my empty arch. Maybe someday something will decide to climb up this. Maybe I'll get a grape. These roses are kind of disappointing me. Look at this. That is our first blueberry. Now these are only 2-year plants. I really should have probably not let them fruit this year, but I did. We have a ton more blueberries down by the road, but these ones kind of just protect the front of the garden. And it was absolutely delicious too. Blueberries in July are like the sweetest thing that you can find. So if you live somewhere and you have not live somewhere where the climate is warm right now and blueberries are kind of coming into season, find yourself a U-pick or some local blueberries because they are phenomenal straight off the bush. Look at these dahlias blooming. So these ones were I want to say it was called a like a tangerine blush or something like that. They're beautiful. And then these red ones have just exploded. They're so pretty. Of course, we've got the tomatoes here. These ones are starting to blush. I'm dealing with a little bit of blossom end rot, but there's a ton of fruit. Good size too. Oh man. It's a fasciated blossom that left this cat-faced tomato. I'll still let him go. Got some big ones back there too. So I noticed a couple days ago that I have an abnormally large amount of blossom end rot. So blossom end rot is caused by a lack of calcium in the soil. So there are a couple of different ways that you can address that. They sell some different sprays like rot. I think it's called like rot off or something. I don't, because all of my plants are fruiting already, I did not want to do any like fruit spray. I didn't want to spray the tomatoes. This tomato is really trying to go rogue. But what I did do is I picked up some garden lime. So garden lime is an organic additive that you can add to your soil. It's a fertilizer, but it will increase the calcium level in the soil. Now what it does is it also decreases the acidity of the soil. So like when you're calcium deficient, you're usually nitrogen heavy in your soil. So we could have avoided all of this if we had actually tested our soil to begin with. Because we didn't, we're dealing with some of those issues now where we have to amend our soil halfway through the season. One thing that we definitely learned this year is that with buying the amount of compost that we're buying in bulk, it definitely makes sense to try to test and amend the soil before we plant anything versus kind of doing what we're doing now when we're already seeing a problem like blossom end rot on, I'd say 50% of our tomatoes. Now we're trying to treat at the soil level. We're still gonna lose those tomatoes. That's not gonna actually fix the blossom end rot in the existing tomatoes. It'll help the later fruit for my indeterminates, but definitely not ideal. I was just saying to Sky that it is very bright right now and not the best time to film a garden tour, but here we are. And I am seeing my Champagne Blush cherry tomatoes from MI Gardener ready. Look at these gorgeous tomatoes. Sky, come over here. Look at these. All right, so because I have a guest in the garden today, ooh, try it. These are the Champagne Blush from MI Gardener. Yeah? Okay, what's it taste like?
It definitely tastes like a tomato. It's a little sweet.
Are you a fan of tomatoes?
A little tart. Nope.
You don't usually like tomatoes?
Nope.
Do you like this one?
I do, actually. I'd eat more of that.
Okay, I see why it's called Champagne Blush. It's actually got like a little bit of almost like a carbonated feel, like when you bite into it.
It's very juicy. It's delicious.
Super juicy. Look at this. But yeah, it's got that like tang. And the tang like champagne, and it's got like a really sweet finish. Those are good.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Make sure you get the good side.
The camera loves you. Oh, there's some more in there. We're getting there. We're getting to the point in the season where there's just so much fruit. Right now it's like here and there we're getting a couple. Oh, that one's not ready yet. But look at, that's more than nothing. Okay, now I gotta make fun of you. What did you just ask? What did you just ask? What did you just ask about this?
It definitely looks like a watermelon.
He said, are you growing a watermelon? And I was like, where? We're in the tomatoes. Nope, that's definitely a tomato. Those are actually a, I think these are my pink 4. Okay, so here, okay, I was just talking about this. This is blossom end rot. So I just saw this tomato and I was like, oh, it's almost ready. No, not almost ready. It is rotted at the end. So I brought that lime, the garden lime, and I'm going to treat all of these beds and hopefully save some of the later fruit. I mean, it's not every tomato. A lot of these actually are fine. But even if you just have a couple, like how disappointing is that?
Very.
It's a bummer. I'm gonna go grab us a second basket for chicken scraps. In other words, all of my blossom end rot tomatoes. Okay, so these are always a favorite in our house. We have little kids. If you have not grown, like different tomato varieties before, you're probably familiar with sweeties. So sweeties are the most common cherry tomato variety. They are just little red cherry tomatoes and the kids absolutely love them. Sky, do you want to go ahead and pick the rest of those?
Absolutely.
So they ripen really quickly. They're super productive. I mean, look at can you see all of the fruit on this plant? Like, it's not all ready yet. Like I said, we're just weeks away from coming out to the garden and having baskets and baskets of food. But we're still getting a little bit, but they're super productive. So if you only have room for like one cherry tomato plant and you like, just a traditional tomato flavor, then these are definitely the route to go. I recommend sweeties 100%. All right, so this onion bed, it's time to go. These are ready. Like some of them are fully dried here. Like they're ready to be harvested. He's good. I mean, he's dry. In fact, he's like ready to go inside to be cured, but it is time. Woo, it is time to harvest those. Maybe Sky and I'll pull those out after we finish the garden tour. What do you think?
Sounds good.
So these are the second succession planting of tomatoes. So those are ready. You want to pick those. These are the sun sugar, which I absolutely love. They are very sweet and delicious. Hi, Rob. Come to say hello. We love the OG garden kitty, even though you think you live with the neighbors. So my purple tomatoes really didn't take off. It was a little warm for that. It's hard. I mean, and I think I called them tomatoes. I meant onions. it's not really, like he just went straight to rot. Onions like it a little bit colder. So I was kind of gambling by putting a second succession in the ground. We had such a mild spring that I thought maybe I'd get away with it. It doesn't appear that I did, but that's okay. I'm gonna let these stay, and then I'm gonna plant some more in the fall in this same bed so that next spring we have a bunch of red tomatoes. Onions, goodness, I got tomatoes on the mind. But we kind of overplanted other varieties this year. I had the sweet onions, and then I also did white onions, and we don't really eat a lot of white onions. So, I mean, this whole bed has probably 50 onions that are decent size that we'll be able to store. And what we're trying to do now is just eat what we have. And so instead of, we have a recipe and it requires A, B, C, and D, so we have to go get it. We look at what we have and then we craft a recipe based on that. So I wish that we had purple onions, but that's okay. We will have some next year. And that's kind of how it goes. You learn a little bit more every year that you garden. And here we have, I believe that this is my Kajari. And look at this. So you can see this little ladybug? I had an aphid problem on this plant. You can see some of the damage that remains, and the ladybugs moved in and they took care of it, which is so cool. That's one of the coolest things about gardening to me, is that you have a pest and nature sends the predator. It's cool. Okay, so this sun is no joke. Thank you for bearing with me. But I wanted to talk about my cucumbers. So these, I have never successfully grown cucumbers. Like, a lot of people grow cucumbers and that's like the easiest thing to grow, and they just get bunches and bunches and they make tons of pickles and like all this stuff. I cannot grow a cucumber to save my life. Like, I mean, I have a huge garden that is thriving in so many ways, but not with the cucumbers. So this cucumber is doing okay. I mean, I've got some ants that are farming some aphids on it, which is not ideal, but I know that the ladybugs moved in right on the other side of the trellis, so I'm hoping that they'll kind of cross over. So if you didn't know this, ants actually are one of the only bugs that farm in a similar manner to humans. So they actually will collect aphids and they farm them. They move them around to do the dirty work for them and then feed them. It is the craziest thing. Ants are super interesting in terms of like insects. But all that to say, they're not helping me here. They're not really a beneficial insect in the garden because they collect one of the worst bugs that you can have in your garden, which are aphids. But anyways, so these cucumbers are just growing really slow. It's barely climbing the trellis, and we're in July. So these were planted back in April, and usually cucumbers just take off. So I don't know, I'm gonna call this like a garden, not fail, but not success this year. And we'll see. I mean, so far I've got like maybe one cucumber growing and it's super small. So I don't know if it's not getting enough water, if it's like the soil makeup. I need to, like I said, I need to test this soil. I don't know, maybe it's like too acidic. It might be that there's a lack of calcium. I don't know. But it's something I'm definitely going to look into, because I think going into next season, one of my goals is going to be to grow cucumbers. So one of my goals this year was to successfully grow zucchini and squash, and I did that. Like, we have successfully harvested zucchini and squash, my first time ever in my life of gardening, which is also crazy because people grow those, it seems like, super easily. I don't know. Maybe it's that these things are hard to grow organically. I don't know. If you have had, struggled with and then overcome cucumbers, let me know your secrets, because I want to grow them. Okay, so these are my chocolate. These are chocolate cherry tomatoes. Look at that. Blossom and rot. How annoying. Into the chicken bucket. I see some blushing tomatoes here. This guy's blushing. He's not quite ready yet. My asparagus bed is looking happy and weedy. We need to get in here and weed it, but basically you don't touch the asparagus this year, so you can see they're very tempting. It's tempting to cut him and eat him, but not gonna. Here are some more cucumbers. Look at them climbing. He does not want to. He said, no thanks. sometimes you have to like just encourage them up, and these tendrils will actually wrap around and he'll start climbing. By nature, he wants to climb, just not today. Look at these peppers. They just look phenomenal. Okay, so I am like 100% sure that this is an eggplant variety, which is hilarious. I could have sworn that she told me it was a pepper variety, but pumpkin on a stick is an eggplant, because this is not a pepper. This is definitely an eggplant plant. So the more you know. My bell peppers look great. Kevin came in and supported these poblanos. Some of them are getting sun scald pretty bad. But I mean, they're still edible when they have sun scald, so that'll be okay. But everything over here looks pretty good. I'm really excited to have another great pepper year. Kevin does so much with preserving the peppers. These look wonderful. Look at all those. All right, I want to talk about these because these are in a state of neglect right now and we need to take care of them. So these are my potatoes. They need to be hilled up. So I don't know if you can see. I did hill some of them up here, which is good, but I need to come in and hill up the rest of these all the way down and hill some of these up too. So if you don't hill up your potatoes, you're not going to get as many potatoes. So I want to make sure that we do that because these are one of the big storage crops that we're going to eat off of, you know, through next winter. Oh my goodness. Look at that dahlia. Wow, that is stunning. Oh my gosh, and look at this one. Gorgeous. I am super excited about the dahlias in this bed. There are 4 plants. So funny story. Okay, so this is hilarious, and I almost feel like I should yell at you all because nobody corrected me in my last garden tour. But before, if you remember, there was a big, like there were the 4 dahlias on the side, and then there was a plant in the middle that I said, it's weird that this is a dahlia because it looks different. Well, you should trust your intuition. Turns out that was a giant weed that I've been watering for 4 months, and it was huge, and it actually killed the dahlia that was planted there. So when you're in doubt, kind of like how I thought that eggplant was a pepper for so long and like was just convinced, even though it didn't look like a pepper, that it must be a pepper. When in doubt, double check yourself, because if you're anything like me, you're probably wrong. All right, this jungle needs some love. I gotta get some more ties out here. But these are just loaded. All of these plants are loaded. I'm hoping to see some of this fruit start turning soon. I do have quite a bit of blossom end rot happening here. Oh, I see. Look at that big guy turning. I'll have to remember to come back and get him. I have a lot more blossom end rot here in these beds than I do the others, which is unfortunate. But these are determinate varieties, so gosh, and something else is destroying this guy, or it might just have been a fasciated blossom. Okay, so this is what happens when you have a fasciated blossom. So basically what I mean when I say a fasciated blossom are multiple blossoms that kind of form together and they all start creating fruit at the same time, and it creates one fruit instead of multiple fruits. So you could have, 4 blossoms that end up creating one fruit. And that fruit fuses together, but what happens is you end up with these really cat-faced tomatoes that often get raw on the inside. So it's not ideal to let fasciated blossoms, turn into fruit. These back beds, it's hilarious because these are our production beds. These are the beds I should be caring about the most because this is what we're gonna put away for the winter. But in reality, they're the ones that have been the most neglected. I don't know if it's because they're back here or if they're kind of Kevin's territory or what. But there are a lot of cat-faced fruits here and unruly tomato plants. So you win some, you lose some. So over here by my tomatillos, I was noticing a lot of this fruit is falling off early. Like this is not a ready tomatillo. See, he's kind of actually sickly inside. So I don't really know what the deal is. I'm gonna put this in the chicken bin. I don't really know what the deal is. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. That storm that came through really did a lot of damage to my tomatillos. So luckily tomatillos are super productive plants. So I'm gonna get a lot of fruit off of these even though it's not in the best shape ever. Gosh, how random. This looks like a Brad's Atomic. And this is not where I planted Brad's Atomic. So it's like always an adventure in my garden. These are every East Tennessee gardener's demise. These are Japanese beetles. Watch out, Sky. Bye. So last year when I got Japanese beetles, I set traps for them. And I've gotten some questions recently about traps, and if you set traps, will you actually end up calling more? That was not my experience last year, but I can't say that it won't. I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen. I found that it actually just pulled them away from the garden and was pretty effective. So I am going to do that again, but I don't know if I necessarily like recommend it. It just kind of, my problem was not super bad. It was bad enough that I wanted to do something, so I just put out those traps. They're just organic, like sugar traps essentially. So that's what I did. I just knocked this poor guy off. Bummer. All right, so this is very exciting for me. This is my giant pumpkin from my grandma. So my grandma's been having a really hard time lately, and she just moved, and I'm really excited to be growing something from her home that she loved, and hopefully these guys get big and strong and grow me 1,000-pound pumpkin. Seems like a great way to feed your pigs. And some of my sunflowers have started to take off, and they are being encroached upon. I told you all that in a matter of weeks this would be a jungle, and here we are. These sweet potatoes have just exploded. They are everywhere. Sweet potatoes everywhere. So my winter squash has started climbing into my bed here. So see, this is interesting. Do you see how winter squash sets new roots? Isn't that awesome? So this squash didn't start in this bed. He actually started over there, but he's setting new roots as he grows, which is just really cool. I'm actually gonna go ahead and let those go back down because I'm gonna let this part of the garden go wild. Even if it means I'm not gonna get as much as maybe I could. We're just gonna see what happens. So you guys know this by now, but my kind of approach to gardening is a little bit organization, a lot of bit let God take control, and let's just see what we get. So I am not seeing a lot of movement on most of my melons, which is a huge bummer. I love melons, but my winter squash is going crazy, which will be great because winter squash is what you preserve into the winter. It's actually not called winter squash because it grows in the winter. It grows in the summer. It's called winter squash because it has a hard skin on it that allows you to store it for multiple months in the house. So that's why you eat a lot of squash in the winter, is because it's still good. I still have 2 butternuts in my pantry right now from last year, and I'm close to having new butternut squash. So that's why they call it winter squash. So most summer squash will actually turn into winter squash, and maybe not most, but some of it. Like my tromboncino squash, I can harvest that as young summer squash, or I can wait for it to get as big as it's gonna get. The skin will harden, and then you can actually store it. Some winter squash stores better than others. So, you know, if you have a spaghetti squash and a butternut, the butternut is gonna store longer than the spaghetti squash. That's just how it goes, but all winter squash stores for some period of time. Look at these summer squash. Oh my gosh, look at that zucchini. So I did not get out here yesterday. I'm gonna actually step over this row. I did not get out here yesterday, and when it comes to squash, you gotta be careful because it gets real big real fast. I was just saying, like, we're at that point where it's hard to walk back here.
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's only gonna get harder, so watch your step.
Got it.
Let's get these big. Look at this. Oh my gosh. Oh, look at this. It's giant. Thank you for being my basket holder.
You're very welcome.
Oh my gosh, this one's even bigger. Look at this. Ready? So when you're harvesting zucchini, you can actually just twist it and it twists right off. Look at this. That is quite the zucchini. We might need a bigger basket. Look at all of this squash. I am not sure what I am going to do in a month when I can't even stand here, but I have summer squash galore. So this guy went a little bit too long. I also popped his head off. I'll get that other piece. Whoops. Try it. It's good raw. It really is. It's good. I like the texture. Like, it's good.
No, not bad.
Told you. Okay, one negative. Well, there's a few negatives to letting your squash just run rampant, which is what is happening here, is that, look at this jungle. It's completely demolished my eggplant. Took it right out. Not good. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna harvest this eggplant. It's a good size. It's got some damage, but we'll see what the inside looks like. I'm gonna take this guy too. And then I'm gonna try to get this guy out of here. You should climb up. So this is a do as I say, not as I do kind of moment, because this is just an absolute jungle. It's almost like past the point of I can do anything about it. The Tromboncino is climbing pretty good, but it was also climbing down, and it's climbing down right here too. And some of this squash, I mean, this is a spaghetti squash that was just all over those tomatoes. So I'm just gonna put him down there and just let him do what he's gonna do. These tomatoes needed to be tied up and pruned. They're my damaged tomatoes. So I guess, the bugs are getting bad out here. These were my damaged tomatoes anyways. I needed to tie them up and I didn't. So at this point, I'm just gonna call this bed the jungle. We'll see what happens. I'm standing here and this dill smells amazing. Oh no, we got topped. Womp womp. To the chickens. But this dill smells amazing. And look at this basil. This variegated basil. The pesto basil is my favorite. Love all of this. Looks so good. The biggest bummer about this bed becoming a jungle and me giving up is look at these fairy eggplants. They had just started growing. We'll see if they make it. Look at this. This is out of control. So, speaking of out of control, you guys see what's happening back here? All right, look at what is happening here. Look at this. Do you see this? This is like 2 feet.
It's longer than your arm.
So definitely longer than my
as long as your arm.
So it's really like 2.5 feet. So this is the Tromboncino squash, and it can be harvested, like I said, as a summer squash or as a winter squash. This is the summer squash version. He's got a little bit of damage, but not bad. I think he'll be totally fine to eat. So I guess we'll try him later. So over here, the carrots and kale look great. This kale we've been eating on. It looks wonderful. This is that Malabar spinach. He is looking good. He's not climbing yet, but he actually might not be getting enough sun. I should probably cut some of that kale, actually. These are those cut flowers. I can't remember the variety. I'll have to go back and look. My lettuce looks great, but the beans are just still not, I mean, barely climbing. So, and same thing with my personal melons. They're not doing great. It's always such a bummer when you plant something and you're really excited about it, especially if you don't plant a ton of it, like the personal melons. I did tiger melons. I did, they're called midget watermelons. And then I also did Kajari melons, and none of them are taking off, which is just such a bummer. It's a bummer when you plant something and you don't plant a ton and you're excited about it and then you don't get anything. It's always a bummer. So if you're feeling like that this season, don't worry, you're not alone. I feel it too. Like my beans ended up damaged by the herbicide damage. But you take some, you give some. I am looking at an incredibly full harvest basket today, and I'm thankful for that. And I know that, there's still so much left in the garden that it's not even time for it yet. So I know we're still gonna have an incredibly successful year this year, but it's still disappointing. So if you're trying to grow something this year and you're disappointed that it doesn't feel like it's turning out, that's okay. You're allowed to be disappointed. I feel that with you. And hopefully it gives us that oomph to do some research and figure out why it didn't work this year and really hit it head on and have success next year. I would be amiss if I did not say the herb bed is so my favorite place in the garden. It is so fragrant and happy. I just absolutely love this space. And I'm so excited that most of these are perennial, or I'm letting them go to seed, and hopefully they'll come back next year. This space is just like a pollinator and a chef's dream come true, all in one. This little guy is doing all right. He is coming back. He died a little bit more, but he's coming back. I don't know. I just really want him to live. Hopefully. That golden oregano. He's so pretty, but so hard to keep alive. Also, you all know these weeds are going to be the death of me. They are just everywhere all the time. It's the worst. Some of my corn is popping up, and these beans seem to be doing fine, though they don't have anything to climb. I'm thinking about coming in and giving them something to climb. I don't know what this is. This might be a weed. I'm not sure. And these corn. These ones look pretty good. So we'll see. My rose of Sharon is blooming. I need to do some research and figure out what I can do with these Rose of Sharon blossoms. I know that you can treat them like hibiscus, so I'm gonna try. Last part of the garden here is my new catnip. These new coral roses that are just stunning. And my passion vine, which is just taking off. So friends, thank you for joining us in the garden. Thank you for coming
having me.
And being a part of this garden tour. You always have a place in my garden, and hopefully we're learning, failing, and succeeding together. Until next time.